The lace sleeve of my wedding gown trembled against my skin as I tightened my grip on the bouquet. White roses. My mother's favorite. The irony made my stomach twist. The string quartet outside played something elegant and slow, the kind of song you imagine walking down the aisle to when your family is there to watch. But mine wasn't. From the window of the bridal suite, I could see the ceremony space spread out below like a magazine photo. Soft lights, champagne linens, every chair perfectly aligned. Except 3. The ones reserved for my parents and my brother, still empty. I checked my phone for the 5th time in 2 minutes. Nothing. No message from Mom, no missed call from Dad. Not even a lazy, running late text from Logan. Just silence. The kind that screams. A knock came at the door. Martha, the wedding planner, peeked in with the kind of polite smile people use at funerals. "It's time, Caroline. Everyone's waiting." Everyone. That word cut sharper than any blade. I swallowed hard and forced a smile. Right. When the doors opened, every head turned. 90 people rose to their feet. Phones out. Eyes glowing. The music swelled, perfect timing, but all I could see were those 3 empty chairs, shining in the afternoon sun like unspoken accusations. Each step felt heavier than the last. The whispers started halfway down the aisle. I didn't need to hear the words to know what they were thinking. Where's her family? Did they not come? At the altar, Ethan, my fiancé, my anchor met my eyes. His expression was steady, warm. He reached for my hands, grounding me in a moment that suddenly felt like quicksand. "I'm here," he whispered, his voice just for me. "We're enough." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But when the vows started, my mother's voice echoed in my head. "We'll try, sweetie. Logan's firm has an event that weekend." As if my wedding were just another calendar inconvenience. I blinked back tears as the officiant said, "Do you take this man?" and realized I was saying yes to love, yes to partnership, and no longer waiting for the people who should have been in those front row seats. The guests clapped. Ethan kissed me. Cameras flashed. It looked perfect. Picture perfect. But perfection is just good lighting on heartbreak. I smiled through every photo, every toast, every dance because that's what daughters like me are trained to do. Smile, perform, pretend the love we never got doesn't ache like an open wound. And as I stood there under the string lights, surrounded by friends who showed up and family who didn't, I thought it was the worst pain I'd ever feel. But I didn't know that the silence of those empty chairs would echo louder 2 years later. Growing up, I learned early that silence could be louder than words. When my brother, Logan, won his first debate trophy, my parents threw a dinner party, candles, wine, the whole show. When I got first place in an art competition, Mom glanced at my certificate and said, "That's nice, honey," before turning back to the roast in the oven. That moment taught me everything I needed to know about my place in the family. Background noise in a house tuned to someone else's station. I spent years trying to fix that. Straighter report cards, scholarship offers, internships. Each accomplishment was another knock on a door that never opened. By the time I graduated college, I'd stopped hoping for applause. I just wanted acknowledgement, a nod, a smile that said, "We see you," but they never did. When I met Ethan, everything felt different. He saw me. The way I spoke about design, the late nights I spent editing video projects, he paid attention. He didn't just love what I achieved. He loved the process, the mess, the spark. He once told me, "You don't need to compete for space in someone's heart, Caroline. The right people make room." For a while, I thought he was wrong because I still found myself checking my phone, hoping my parents would call. I told myself they were busy, that love looked different for everyone. But deep down, I knew better. When Ethan proposed, I thought maybe this was my chance to reset the story to finally be seen. I imagined Mom crying as I walked down the aisle, Dad taking photos, Logan teasing me about tripping over my dress. I imagined family, but the wedding proved otherwise. 3 empty chairs, 90 guests pretending not to notice. Ethan's mother hugging me tighter than my own ever had. I smiled through the night, told myself love found me elsewhere. That family wasn't about blood. I even believed it for a little while. 2 years later, that belief had hardened into something colder. Success had replaced validation. I built my company from scratch, turned sleepless nights into milestones, and sold it for $21 million before I turned 35. Everyone saw me now, except the ones I'd once tried to impress. Ethan threw a celebration party in our downtown Portland loft. Champagne poured like rain. Laughter filled the air. And for the first time, I felt proud, genuinely proud. But then someone shouted, "Caroline, check Instagram." And just like that, the air shifted. On the screen was a photo of my family, Logan, Mom, Dad, and his perfect suburban wife, all smiling under a banner that read, "Family Tradition Continues." I zoomed in. They were standing in front of Westridge Academy, the private school I'd begged to attend years ago, but couldn't because money was tight. Now they were sending Logan's twin daughters there. My chest tightened as I read the caption, "Proud to support the next generation." There was no mention of me. Not even a comment on my company's success, something the local news had covered the same week. I locked my phone, pretending the laughter in the room still sounded the same. But inside, something sharp and familiar cracked open, the old wound of invisibility I thought I'd buried under success. I tried to ignore it. I really did. Until 3 nights later, my phone rang. And this time, it was Mom. Her voice was tight, brittle, like she'd rehearsed it. "Caroline, we need to talk. There's going to be a family meeting." I froze mid-breath, my mind spinning. After 2 years of silence, now they wanted to talk? But I didn't know that this wasn't a reunion. It was an ambush disguised as family. I stared at the screen, Mom's name still glowing against the dark background. For a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined it some cruel trick of exhaustion and champagne. But no, it was real. "Family meeting," she'd said, like we'd just had dinner together last week. Her voice was too calm, too polite. The kind of tone she used when she wanted something. I almost didn't call back. Almost. But curiosity, that old, painful habit, won again. "Hey, Mom," I said when she answered. My voice sounded steady, but my pulse wasn't. "Caroline. Just my name. No, how are you? No congratulations on selling your company. No, I saw the article in the Chronicle." She cleared her throat. "We need to talk about some family matters. Tomorrow at 2. Your father wants everyone present." "Everyone?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes," she said. "Logan and Hannah will be there. My brother and his perfect wife. The ones who had managed to turn every family event into a spotlight, just bright enough to burn me out of frame." "What's this about?" I pressed. A pause. Then, "It's complicated." That word again. Complicated. In my family, it meant we need your help but don't want to say it out loud. "I'll be there," I said finally, my voice colder than I intended. Ethan watched from across the room, leaning against the kitchen counter, reading my face the way he always did, like a code only he could decipher. "What's wrong?" "They want a family meeting." He raised an eyebrow. "After 2 years of ghosting you? That's sudden." I laughed, but it came out hollow. "Yeah, I'm sure it's purely out of love and not the fact that they saw me in a $135,000 car on Instagram." Ethan crossed the room and cupped my face in his hands. "Remember, you don't owe them anything." "I know," I said, but the truth was, I wasn't sure I believed it yet. The next morning, I drove the Porsche up the long suburban road that led to my parents' colonial-style house. Every tree, every mailbox, every brick felt heavy with memories I didn't want. My father's voice at dinner. "Your brother's working 80-hour weeks. He's going places." My mother's sigh whenever I tried to talk about my business. "You and your little projects, Caroline." Now, I had more than projects. I had power. But I wasn't sure it mattered. The house looked the same: white columns, green shutters, picture-perfect lies. Logan's SUV sat in the driveway, parked right where Dad used to tell me not to. The front door opened before I reached it. Mom stood there, wearing pearls. Her smile stretched too tight. "You look well," she said, eyes flicking over my clothes, the car behind me, everything but my face. "Thanks," I replied flatly. Inside, the dining table was already set with coffee, pastries, and I couldn't help but notice a thick stack of folders. Logan and Hannah were seated, pretending to look casual. Dad stood at the head of the table like he was about to lead a board meeting. "Let's get started," he said, as though I worked for him. Started on what, exactly? I asked, refusing to sit. Dad opened one of the folders, pushing papers toward me. Your brother's had some financial difficulties. The mortgage, the twins' tuition, it's been tough. Your mother and I have been helping, but… Helping, I interrupted. You mean draining your retirement? Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. You're doing so well, Caroline. It's time you supported the family. My jaw clenched. The family that couldn't even show up to my wedding? Logan scoffed. Are you really bringing that up now? Yes, I said, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. I am. I'm Mina. Dad sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. We just need a loan. Temporary. You'll hardly notice it. There it was, the reason for the call. The meeting. The sudden interest in my existence. It wasn't love. It was math. I looked around the table, my mother avoiding my eyes, my father performing calm authority, my brother pretending not to be desperate. And in that moment, it hit me like a revelation. They didn't come because they didn't see me as family. They came now because they saw me as a resource. I smiled slowly, the kind of smile that makes people nervous. You know what's funny? I said softly. I actually brought something for this meeting. Logan's smirk faded. What do you mean? I set my bag on the table, unzipping it just enough for the edge of a thick envelope to show. I think you'll want to see it, I said. But they had no idea that what I was about to show them wasn't money, it was their reckoning. The dining room smelled like old coffee and polished wood, the same scent that used to mean safety when I was little. Now, it just smelled like control. Dad sat at the head of the table like it was his kingdom. Mom beside him with her pearls and worried eyes, and Logan across from me, checking his watch like he had better things to do. I didn't sit. You wanted to talk, I said, resting my bag on the chair back. So talk. Dad cleared his throat, folding his hands like this was a quarterly earnings report. Logan's business has hit a temporary downturn. We've done everything we can, but the situation is critical. The bank's threatening foreclosure. The twins' tuition is unpaid, Mom cut in, her tone dripping with practiced heartbreak. They could lose their spot at Westridge Academy. My jaw tightened. The same school you told me we couldn't afford when I was 16? Mom blinked, caught off guard. That was different. Of course it was, I said quietly. It always is. Logan leaned back, crossing his arms. We're family, Caroline. You're successful now. Helping us out wouldn't even dent your bank account. That word help hit me harder than I expected. It was so clean, so innocent, so manipulative. Dad slid a document across the table, his tone calm, almost casual. We've already drafted the paperwork for the loan. You'll just need to sign here, and we'll handle the rest. I stared at the contract, my name typed neatly above a line, like they'd known I'd agree before I even walked in. Like they still thought they owned me. I laughed, a quiet, humorless sound that startled even me. You really planned this out, didn't you? Mom's hands trembled against her teacup. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. We've supported Logan all these years because he has a family. He's struggling. And I didn't? I asked, my voice sharper now. I built my company from nothing while you were paying his mortgage. You missed my graduation, my wedding, my product launch, every single thing I did you ignored. But now that there's money involved, suddenly I'm family again? The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Logan broke it first, his voice rising. You've always been jealous. You couldn't stand that Mom and Dad believed in me more. Believed in you, I repeated, my tone flat. They bankrolled your failures and called it love. His face flushed red, his chair scraping back as he stood. Watch yourself. I smiled, slow and deliberate. No, Logan, you should watch me. I reached into my bag and pulled out the thick envelope I'd mentioned earlier, setting it on the table like a quiet bomb. What's that? Dad asked, his voice wary. Something I thought you should see before I make my decision. I slid it toward them. It's not a check, if that's what you're thinking. Mom hesitated, then opened the envelope. Inside was a printed press release, elegant, official. The Rivera Media Foundation, empowering young women in digital arts, endowed with $16 million by entrepreneur Caroline Rivers. They read in silence, the color draining from Dad's face. Logan's eyes darted between the paper and me, disbelief twisting his features. You gave away $16 million, he spat. To strangers? I met his glare. To girls like me, the ones who were overlooked, the ones who didn't have anyone cheering them on. Mom's voice cracked. That money could have helped your family. It is helping my family, I said softly. The one I chose to build. For a moment, no one spoke. The air was electric. The illusion of hierarchy shattered. Then Dad leaned forward, voice low and cold. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes, I said. I've stopped pretending you ever deserved a piece of my success. The room went still, and then Logan's chair screeched against the floor as he lunged up, face flushed, veins visible in his neck. You ungrateful. Careful, I cut in, my tone razor sharp. I'm recording. Their faces froze. And that's when I realized for the first time in my life I wasn't the powerless one in this house anymore. But I didn't know that Logan's anger wasn't the only explosion waiting to happen. The real one was still ahead, and it would destroy more than just his pride. Logan's eyes went wild the moment I said the word recording. He froze, his mouth half open, fists clenched at his sides. Dad's expression flickered anger first, then calculation. The look of a man suddenly realizing he'd lost control of the narrative. You're recording us? He said, his voice trembling with a rage he was trying to disguise as dignity. I nodded slowly. Yes, for transparency. You taught me to always protect my interests, remember? Mom gasped like I'd slapped her. Caroline, that's disgusting. We're your parents. I met her eyes. Exactly. And parents don't ambush their children for money. Logan slammed his hand against the table so hard the coffee cups rattled. You think you're better than us now, with your cars and your money? I stared at him, voice steady. No, Logan, I know I am. That did it. His face flushed crimson. You're pathetic. You always were. Dad was right. You only care about yourself. Funny, I said. I could say the same about the three of you. He started pacing, the sound of his dress shoes snapping against the hardwood floor. You think this little foundation makes you some kind of saint? You gave away money that could have saved this family. No, I said quietly. It could have prolonged your bad habits. Dad stood, trying to take back authority. Enough. This isn't about the past. It's about responsibility. You owe this family. That word owe set something off in me. I'd swallowed it my entire life. Owe them time. Owe them patience. Owe them forgiveness. Owe them understanding. But now, standing there, I realized the truth. I didn't owe them anything. I turned toward Dad, my voice calm, but every word landed like glass on marble. I paid my dues when you ignored every success I had. When you let Logan steal my college fund. When you missed my wedding because his firm had an event. You talk about responsibility? I learned it from necessity, not from you. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. That's not fair. I cut her off. Fair? You never taught me that word existed in this house. The silence that followed was the kind that only comes before something breaks. Logan lunged across the table, grabbing the paper from Mom's trembling hands. He tore it in half, shouting, You're not ruining this family's name for some publicity stunt. I didn't flinch. I just pulled a second copy from my bag and laid it flat on the table. Already filed, already funded, already public by morning. Dad looked like he wanted to speak, but his voice failed him. Mom sank into her chair, whispering, What happened to you, Caroline? I smiled sadly. I grew up. For a moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the clock ticking behind me, 12 beats of silence that felt like years. Then Logan said, almost a whisper, If you walk out that door, don't ever come back. I met his stare. You mean like you did to me? At my wedding? He took a step forward, his rage boiling over, and Dad grabbed his arm to stop him. Enough. The chair tipped over. The tension snapped. I stood, smoothing the sleeves of my blazer, picking up my bag like I was leaving a business meeting instead of a family implosion. You all made your choice years ago, I said. Now I'm just making mine. As I turned toward the door, Mom's voice followed me, soft, cracked, desperate. Caroline, please. Don't do this. I paused, one hand on the doorframe, the other still holding the envelope that had started this war. I already did, I said. You just didn't notice. And as I stepped outside into the cold afternoon air, I thought that was the end of it, but I didn't know that by morning, my name and my family's would be everywhere. By sunrise, my phone was a war zone. Missed calls from Mom, texts from Logan, voicemails from unknown numbers that somehow still sounded like guilt. The press release had gone live at 8 a.m. sharp. Entrepreneur Caroline Rivers donates $16 million to empower young women in digital arts. The photo accompanying it showed me smiling beneath the foundation's new logo, calm, confident, free. Within hours, my name trended across Portland's business feed. But by noon, so did my family's. Logan moved fast. He always did, especially when his ego was bruised. By lunchtime, he'd called a local reporter from the Chronicle, framing me as the estranged daughter who abandoned her struggling family. The headline hit like a punch. Tech millionaire turns her back on parents in crisis. Ethan sent me the link while I was in a meeting. His text said simply, "Don't react, let it play out." But it was hard not to. The comments section burned strangers debating my morality, my loyalty, my character. Words like selfish, cold, heartless floated between posts of my wedding photos, the same ones my parents never attended. That night, I stood in the kitchen scrolling through the chaos while Ethan stirred pasta on the stove. "You okay?" he asked softly. I shook my head. "They're turning my whole life into a headline." "They can't rewrite the truth," he said. I looked up at him. They already did. But what I didn't know was that the truth, the real truth, was about to rewrite them. The next day, the Chronicle ran a follow-up story. The reporter, apparently smarter than Logan expected, had asked why none of them had attended my wedding and why their struggling family still lived in a $2 million home. The silence in their interview was apparently deafening. The public tide turned overnight. Comments shifted from pity to outrage for me. "She built herself up," one woman wrote. "They used her." By Friday, Logan's law firm had suspended him over ethical concerns. His mortgage company filed foreclosure paperwork. The twins' expensive school quietly removed them from enrollment. I should have felt vindicated, but instead, I felt empty. Like I'd finally won the war, but the battlefield still smelled like smoke. That weekend, Mom left me a voicemail, the kind laced with rehearsed tears. "We never meant for it to get this far. You've embarrassed the family, Caroline. Please call us back so we can fix this before more people talk." More people. Not more damage, not more pain, just more talk. That was the moment I stopped feeling guilty. On Monday, my assistant buzzed my office line. "Miss Rivers," she said, her voice tight. "Your family is here, in the lobby." Through the glass wall, I could see them, Mom clutching her pearls, Dad's jaw set in fury, Logan standing behind them like a coiled spring. My team froze, waiting for my reaction. I inhaled slowly, set down my pen, and said the words I'd never had the courage to say before. "Have security escort them out, politely, professionally, no exceptions." My assistant hesitated. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "They made this public. They can live with the consequences in public." Through the window, I watched as security guided them toward the elevator. Mom's voice carried down the hall, breaking on the words. "She's abandoning her family." Or, Logan caught my eye through the glass one last time, his lips curling into a snarl. "This isn't over." He was right. It wasn't. Because later that night, as the city lights flickered outside our apartment, an email landed in my inbox from my attorney. Subject line: "Threat of legal action. Family claiming defamation." And that's when I realized they weren't just angry anymore. They were coming for my name. The email glowed on my laptop screen like a silent threat. Notice of intent to pursue legal action. I read it 3 times before my hands finally stopped shaking. My parents and Logan had hired a lawyer, one whose name I recognized from every local business scandal in Oregon. Their claim? Defamation, emotional distress, damage to family reputation. I almost laughed. The same people who spent decades pretending I didn't exist were now accusing me of ruining their good name. Ethan found me sitting on the couch, the laptop open on the coffee table, unreadable fury flickering in my eyes. "Tell me they didn't," he said quietly. "Oh, they did." I handed him the screen. "Apparently, I've been conducting a smear campaign by existing." He set the laptop down and knelt in front of me. You have everything documented. Every voicemail, every message, every time they reached out only for money. I nodded, but anger still pressed behind my ribs like static electricity. They're not just trying to hurt me, they're trying to control the story. He smiled grimly. Then we give them a better one. Within days, my lawyer, Sarah Chen, a powerhouse with a smile sharp enough to cut glass, drafted the response. We countered every accusation with receipts, timestamps, emails, texts, the recording of the meeting where they demanded the loan. Sarah's voice was calm as ever. They can't win, Caroline, but they can make noise. Are you ready for that? I thought I was. I wasn't. Because Logan didn't stop at legal threats, he went for humiliation. He started leaking half-truths to small gossip outlets. That I'd cut off my family after making money. That I bought my husband's loyalty. That my foundation was a vanity project. But the universe has a strange way of timing things. The same week his story ran, Portland Business Journal published a feature on me. From Neglect to Leadership, How Caroline Rivers Built a Legacy of Empowerment. The article highlighted the Foundation's mentorship program and included testimonials from the first recipients, young women whose lives had already changed. The comments under that story told a different narrative. Not a selfish daughter, but a self-made woman. Not cold, but resilient. Not ruthless, but justified. When the gossip site doubled down, Sarah sent a single, devastating letter threatening libel charges backed with documentation. The story vanished within 24 hours. Then came the part I hadn't planned. The dominoes falling on their side. Logan's firm dropped him completely, citing reputation risk. His clients pulled out one by one. My parents' retirement fund, the one they'd used to prop up his lifestyle, was frozen pending debt review. Their perfect suburban house hit the market within 2 weeks. The local paper caught wind, running a brutally titled piece. Lawyer who accused daughter of defamation faces foreclosure. Ethan showed me the headline over breakfast, his tone soft. Karma works fast when you stop protecting the people who caused your pain. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the photo of their house, the front porch where I once waited for them to come home from Logan's tournaments, the same porch where I'd stood months ago, deciding to walk away. A week later, I received another email. Not from lawyers this time, from Maya, one of the Foundation's first scholarship recipients. Subject: Thank you for seeing me. Her message was simple but raw. When I watched your interview, I cried. Because I know what it's like to be invisible in your own family. You showed me that success isn't about proving people wrong, it's about proving yourself right. I read it twice, then leaned back, exhaling for what felt like the first time in months. The lawsuit was dying quietly in the background. My foundation was thriving. The public had chosen their side, but I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't gloating. I was finally breathing. And yet, deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Because guilt has a way of reanimating the dead, and my family's guilt was about to come knocking again. Literally, at my office, with cameras. It started as a murmur in the lobby. Then my assistant's voice came through the intercom, tight with panic. Miss Rivers, your family is here. And the press. For a second, the air in my office froze. The hum of computers, the clicking keyboards, everything stopped. Through the glass wall, I saw the flash of cameras, reporters crowding behind the reception desk. And in the middle of it all, my mother's pale suit, my father's stoic face, and Logan standing between them, arms crossed, jaw tight. They looked like a portrait of grief, painted over entitlement. I closed my laptop. Call security, I said evenly. Should I? Escort them out. Calmly, professionally. When I stepped into the hallway, my staff looked at me unsure, waiting to follow my lead. It's handled, I told them. My voice didn't shake. Not this time. Security arrived within seconds. The crowd's noise swelled, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing until one microphone caught Mom's trembling words. She's abandoning her family. We only wanted to talk. The flashbulbs popped, blinding for a moment. I didn't flinch. Logan's voice cut through the chaos. You think this foundation makes you better than us? You're still nothing without your family. I walked to the glass doors and met his eyes through the reflection. Calm, Controlled. You're right, I said, loud enough for the nearest reporter to hear. That's why I built my own. The silence that followed was instant, almost cinematic. Security ushered them out, and as the elevator doors closed, my mother looked back one last time, a flash of disbelief, hurt, maybe realization. Inside my office, my team stood frozen. Do you need a break, Caroline? My assistant whispered. No, I said, let's get back to work. That night, the story spread again, but this time, the footage told a different truth. The video showed me calm, poised, standing firm while my family caused a scene. Comment sections filled with praise. She handled that with class. Boundaries aren't cruelty. That's what breaking generational control looks like. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to defend myself. 2 days later, my therapist, Patricia, poured jasmine tea as I replayed the footage on my phone. They tried to use shame, she said. But it doesn't work on someone who no longer feels small. I smiled. It still hurts, but less than staying silent. She nodded. That's growth, Caroline. Freedom isn't peace without pain, it's peace that survives it. A week passed. Then 2, the storm died down. My parents sold the house. Logan vanished from social media. The silence that followed wasn't hostile anymore, it was cleansing. The foundation's work grew faster than I expected. Donations poured in, mentorship programs doubled, and I found myself surrounded by women who reminded me of the girl I used to be: overlooked, underestimated, but burning with potential. One of them, Maya, the 7-year-old filmmaker we'd selected as our first scholar, approached me after a workshop. You said in your interview that family doesn't always see your light, she said. What do you do when they try to turn it off? I thought about the years I'd begged for acknowledgement, the years I dimmed myself to keep the peace. Then I smiled at her. You shine anyway, I said, until it burns through the walls they built around you. She nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. Then I'll shine too. That night, Ethan and I hosted a dinner at our home long table. Soft lighting, laughter spilling like wine. Naomi, my first investor, toasted the foundation. Maya sat beside me, glowing with excitement. Looking around, I realized something I'd never felt before. This was family, not inherited, chosen, not owed, earned. But just as I lifted my glass, my phone buzzed on the table. A name I hadn't seen in months. Dad. The message was simple. Your mother wants to meet. She's sick. Please. One last conversation. The room fell quiet around me as I read it again. Ethan's hand brushed mine. You don't owe them anything, he whispered. I looked at the message and felt the old ache twist inside my chest. No, I didn't owe them. But maybe this time, I needed it. Not for them. For me, I picked up my phone, exhaled slowly, and typed 3 words that would reopen every door I'd worked so hard to close. Tell her when. But I didn't know that this meeting wouldn't bring closure, it would bring truth. A truth that would finally set me free. The coffee shop smelled like rain and roasted beans when I walked in. It was the kind of small, quiet place where nothing dramatic should ever happen, where people write emails, not endings. Mom was already there. Pale scarf, silver earrings, eyes that looked older than I remembered. Dad sat across from her, a newspaper folded neatly beside his untouched cup. For a second, I almost turned around. The familiar ache in my chest told me to leave before they could take anything more from me. But then I thought of Maya, of all the young women watching how I would handle this moment. So I stayed. Mom looked up, and for the first time in years, her smile didn't feel rehearsed. You came, she said softly. I did, I replied. I took the seat across from them. No hugs, no small talk, just space between us finally equal. For a long time, none of us spoke. The rain tapped against the window. People around us laughed softly, cups clinking, the sound of normal lives happening. Then Dad cleared his throat. His voice, once so commanding, came out thin. Your mother's health isn't good. The stress hasn't helped. I nodded. I'm sorry to hear that. It was the truth, even if it didn't erase the past. Mom reached for my hand, hesitating just before touching it. We made mistakes, she said quietly. We thought if we pushed Logan, he'd carry the family name. We didn't see what we were doing to you." Her eyes filled with tears. "We should have been there. At your wedding. At everything." And the words hung in the air, fragile as porcelain. Part of me wanted to believe her. Another part, the part that remembered every forgotten birthday, every invisible achievement, wanted to guard itself. "I waited years for that sentence," I said finally. "But it doesn't undo the damage." Dad's voice broke. "We know. We're not asking for forgiveness, just a chance to make things right." I leaned back, studying them. The power dynamic was reversed, now no longer the obedient daughter seeking love, but a woman with boundaries and a voice. "I don't hate you," I said, "but I can't pretend everything's okay. If there's going to be contact, it happens with conditions, therapy, accountability, and no more manipulation." Dad frowned slightly. "That's unnecessary." I stood. "Then so is this meeting." Mom grabbed his wrist before he could protest. "We'll do it," she said quickly. Then softer, "Please don't disappear again." I looked at her, really looked, and saw something I hadn't before. Not guilt, not arrogance, just loss. The quiet kind that comes when people finally realize they can't buy their way back into love. I nodded once. "We'll see." When I stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled like clean pavement and new beginnings. Ethan waited in the car across the street. When I got in, he didn't ask what happened. He just took my hand. "Was it worth it?" he asked gently. "Yes," I said after a moment. "Because I didn't go there to fix them. I went there to free myself." Months later, the foundation hosted its first national gala. Maya's short film premiered that night, a story about a girl who learned to stop chasing approval and start building her own path. When the credits rolled, the audience stood, applause echoing through the grand hall. I looked out over the crowd, my team, my friends, my chosen family, and realized there were no empty seats anymore. After the event, a reporter asked me what inspired the foundation's mission. I smiled, the answer coming easier than it ever had. Because I learned that family doesn't mean ownership. It means presence, support, respect. And if you can't find it in the home you were born into, you build it yourself. She nodded, jotting it down. "And your family, do they support your work now?" I glanced toward the window, where the city lights blurred like memories I no longer needed to chase. "They're learning," I said simply, "and that's enough." That night, as I drove home, I thought about the long road from invisibility to freedom. The betrayals, the silences, the lessons written in pain. I thought about how I once mistook love for approval, and how healing meant letting go of both. When I pulled into our driveway, Ethan squeezed my hand and whispered, "You look lighter." I smiled. "I am." And for the first time, I believed it. Moral: no one owns your peace. Family isn't who raised you, it's who rises with you.